So yeah, thank you for joining today. So today I will be discussing why speed, flexibility, and feedback are your secret weapons, as this is something that's fundamentally changing how education organizations approach admissions through agility. So first of all, we call this the age of admissions agility, because we know that family students of today are more connected, maybe more demanding, and definitely more digitally savvy than ever before. And we really know this firsthand because the schools, colleges, universities that we work with are the ones that can move quickly, adapt easily, and then also respond intelligently in real time. And we've seen this firsthand. So this is why this session is about why speed, flexibility, and feedback are no longer nice to haves in admissions, but definitely your competitive edge. So that's just a bit of an intro, but an intro to myself. If I haven't met you before, it's lovely to meet you. I am Gemma. I'm a customer experience manager and senior HubSpot consultant at HubGem. So I work directly with schools, colleges, and universities with implementing HubSpot for marketing and admissions. And HubGem are HubSpot for education specialists, and we have worked again with many schools, colleges, and universities to streamline and improve the way they work day to day. So everything I'm sharing today is really grounded in what we're seeing working with these education organizations, and it's not just theory. So before we kind of talk about the why now, I think it's really important to acknowledge the reality that most education organizations are facing. The admissions landscape has changed dramatically in just a few years, and now families expect the same experience that they get from their day to day, whether it's on Amazon or the apps they use or their bank, for example. And this means they expect that instant acknowledgement, personal updates, and reassurance at every step. And at the same time, we know that admissions and marketing teams are under more pressure than ever before. Inquiry volumes might be rising, but we know that time, headcount, and budgets usually aren't rising with them. Many schools who we work with at the start are still relying on spreadsheets, shared inboxes, and the big one being those disconnected systems. So this really makes it incredibly hard to keep up with those modern expectations. And on top of that, the admissions journey itself is no longer simple. You might be managing domestic and international families, agents, scholarships, bursaries, siblings, late entries, all of these different things, which doesn't follow a nice, neat funnel, maybe as you would have liked to. So, families nowadays or students might attend an open day before inquiring, they might apply without visiting, they might disappear for months and then one day come back, or they might engage across multiple channels at once. And this means now that every single touch point in your journey shapes that trust. So every acknowledgement, follow up, and delay all contributes to how your family and your students perceive your school. And that's really why agility, flexibility, and those smarter systems aren't optional anymore. We see them as essential. So, why now? So, admissions teams, like I've mentioned, are under rising pressures from those social factors, political uncertainty, economic pressures on families. But also, at the same time, families are more digitally confident than ever, and they expect this faster communication as a standard. And of course, that's before we even talk about AI, which I know is a really hot topic at the moment. But across almost every industry, families are now used to personalised recommendations, instant updates, and those helpful nudges without even asking. Even if you go onto a website page nowadays, you then might receive an email, you've left something in your basket, or have you heard about, this promotion? And families are experiencing this in their day to day, and this really becomes the baseline of what good looks like. So when a form submission goes unacknowledged, or a response takes 2 or 3 days to reply to that family or that student, this gap definitely feels much bigger than it did a year ago or a few years ago. And we've seen that other schools that are already using automation and AI to respond within minutes, send tailored next steps, and identify where families are getting stuck are really ahead of the curve. So we definitely know that that competitive gap is widening quickly. And of course, it isn't just about replacing people with AI, again, a very hot topic, but it's about using technology to remove that friction. So your teams can focus on what matters most, and it's that human connection, that relationship building. So this is why speed is your first competitive edge. Families don't just expect full response instantly, but they do expect that acknowledgement. Research shows that responding within 24 hours dramatically increases that engagement. And in HubSpot terms, this is where we would implement automated confirmation emails, inquiry workflows, and task assignment to teams, which makes that immediate difference. So even sending a simple "thank you, we've received your inquiry, here's what happens next" email will calm nerves, build that trust, and also keep families engaged. So just touching on that piece there about automation. Again, it isn't about removing that human touch. It's about enabling it. So in HubSpot, all applicant and family data lives in one place. You've got your inquiries, visits, applications, and communications are all connected. So by using automations, we can acknowledge inquiries instantly, assign them to the right admissions officer, send next steps automatically, and also track everything without that manual effort, therefore using that time to build these relationships. You can also use AI practically by generating email templates in your tone of voice, drafting follow-ups, summarizing inquiry history before a call or a tour. So this means that your team spends less time in the copying, pasting, and drafting emails, and more time having those meaningful conversations. So of course, this sounds great, and it isn't theoretical. We've seen schools that we've worked with reduce response times from hours to minutes, significantly increase open day attendance, and improve inquiry to application conversion. And in some cases, engagement increases by up to 45%, simply by being faster and more consistent by using the tools that they have available. And I think it's, quite clear that families might not compare you to other schools, or they might, but the key thing here is that they compare you to the best digital experience that they've had. So the experiences they're having day to day, they're also expecting the same from your school or education organisation. So this is key why we need to talk about flexibility. So traditionally, the admissions funnel or process assumes a nice, neat, linear journey from inquiry to visit to application, offer, enrollment. But families don't really behave like this anymore. And we've seen this firsthand by working with schools, colleges, and universities. They might enter at different points, they might ask different questions, and they might move at their own pace. So even though you might want to mold them into your own admissions journey, we know that that's not always the case. Therefore, your systems need to adapt to families and not force your families to adapt to your processes and your mold. So here are some examples that we see all the time. For example, a year 3 child might inquire for year 9 because they're looking ahead. Some families might apply without attending an open day, so that's the first time you've heard about them. International families might move at different paces because of that specific tailored journey. Late entry candidates might, arrive out of cycle and want to apply, next week in September. But by having these flexible systems, it allows you to manage your open mornings, your scholarships, bursaries if you offer them, international admissions, sibling journeys, and then those late applications. And in HubSpot, this flexibility comes from conditional logic in forms, segmented lists, dynamic workflows, and having multiple pipelines or pathways. So I think it's really key here that when your process bends, the experience feels personal, and that trust grows with your families and your students. Now, this might seem like, you might have to do loads to change the way that you're currently working, but it doesn't really mean that you need to do a whole system overhaul and rebuild. Flexibility means you can make those small changes, which has a huge impact. For example, you might want to show scholarship questions in your registration form only when they're relevant. You might want to tailor your emails by year group or different entry points, or the applicant or the child's interests. You might want to adjust workflows for late entries. We've seen schools significantly reduce drop-offs simply by asking better questions at the right time and collecting the right information when it's needed. So I guess with discussing flexibility, start thinking about if your systems are really flexible enough to meet the needs of families or students today, maybe not the ones from 5+ years ago. So that's definitely a takeaway from this. Okay, so next we are looking at feedback, and this is kind of the last pillar. So we've talked about speed and flexibility, but arguably neither of those truly work without feedback. So agility isn't just about moving quickly. It's about learning quickly and adjusting with confidence. So in admissions, feedback is really happening all the time. Now, it might be that you are a school or an education organisation and you might not be capturing feedback. But if you actually look at every inquiry, open day, every application you receive with any comments or additional notes, any withdrawals, and the parent or the student gives a reason, or any acceptances, it's definitely a signal for this feedback. So the difference between agile and reactive schools is that agile schools capture those signals in one place, analyze them, and then act on them. So as I've mentioned, when someone inquires or they come, for an open day or a tour or they withdraw their place, they might be giving you this feedback, and consciously it's there. So, like I've mentioned, many schools that we've worked with personally say, we don't really collect feedback, but when we actually look closer, it's already there, it's just scattered. So, as an example, it might live in email replies. You might be having a conversation with a parent or a student, and they've provided you, even a small piece of feedback that you could then use and act on. It might be notes from phone calls that you've noted down somewhere. It also might be in spreadsheets or just scribbled down on a piece of paper that sits in a filing cabinet or that you've lost in the office. It might be comments in shared inboxes, or someone might have just fed back the feedback to you and it's just in your memory. Now, I believe the challenge here is that feedback, the challenge here, sorry, is that feedback doesn't exist. It's just that it's not structured, visible, and then you can't report on it. So, of course, this is where a CRM like HubSpot becomes incredibly powerful. When feedback is captured against a contact or an applicant record, it stops being anecdotal and starts becoming insightful. And we've really seen that the schools, colleges, and universities that we've worked with can actively use feedback to reduce those drop-off points, improve that conversion, and also refine your messaging. So, if someone comes into a tour or an open day and gives you feedback about that specific tour or open day, you can then really refine what you're currently doing, hopefully by improving that conversion for the next set of families that come through. And I think it's really key to think about it's how you've made families feel. And even if they don't choose you, which hopefully they will, but it's that feeling and relating to them that really sticks with them in terms of the feedback. So, of course, this doesn't have to be, again, a huge thing that you implement to capture this feedback. It doesn't need to be complicated. By having these small actions where you're collecting this feedback will really help you build that trust. So, just as some examples to take away, is after open day or events. You can ask, how did we do? A really simple question can go a really long way. Or even, how would this experience, or we would have made this experience even better. Again, you can take that feedback and you can capture it via forms, as an example, a feedback survey, calling parents or students after an open event or open day to gather this feedback and record it and then act on it for the next kind of intake year. Again, you might want to capture this by forms, but also you might want to do automated email follow-ups that includes a form. This can then be stored directly on the contact or the family's record. You might want to capture feedback during the application journey. So tracking where families pause or drop off. You might want to capture this information in a withdrawal or decline reason field, which then you can report on. In this academic year, what was the most reasons that people withdrew or declined a place? You can then look at what the most popular reasons are and then close that gap. You can also identify where questions spike. So if there's a specific part of your process where families, parents, or students might have certain questions or question what they're doing in the process, or there might be a pause, for example, after inquiry, you might not hear about them for a while. You could ask, why does that part of the process see a drop off or a freeze? And this will really help you to decrease this friction in your process. You could see that ask questions that you need clearer answers for, and also you can reassure your families and your students then throughout the process. Another thing that I want to touch on is communication preference. Now, it's all well and good people coming into your school, college, university and giving you feedback on their experience, but also they then might hear from you through other different channels. So you might want to ask them how often your families or your students want to hear from you, which channels they might prefer hearing from. Is it via a newsletter? Is it via an email? Is it on their socials, for example? And also, you could ask, linking to that point, what content actually helps them decide that your school, college, or university is for them. And that's where you can take on that feedback and then kind of improve. So as an example, if a parent goes onto your website and there's not much there about other students or families' experiences, that it's just apply here and there's not any information that really attracts them to your school, any testimonials, any videos about, school guides and school tours that will help them ultimately decide if they want to tour or go to an open morning. Maybe it's worth reviewing what actually helps them decide, choose you as a school, college, or a university to enroll themselves as a student or their child onto. So, of course, all of this feedback really allows you to personalize without overwhelming. So instead of, spamming someone, asking them all of these 100 questions where you want to gather this feedback, by drip feeding this feedback throughout your process will really allow you to have that data and then continuously improve. So, bringing it all together. So, when we bring all of this together, agility isn't just a single tool or system, it's really a mindset. It's about how your admissions and marketing teams respond, adapt, and learn as families and students move throughout your journey. And really, at its core, the agile admissions mindset is built on these three pillars that we've discussed today. First of all, being speed. Your quick, constant response workflows that acknowledge families immediately builds that trust from their very first interaction and keeps you competitive in the crowded market. So if you're not sending an automated thank you for inquiring, here are the next steps, or admissions will be in touch soon, at that very first touch point, if that's your first touch point, families will then be disengaged. Speed reassures your families, reduces that anxiety, and signals that your school is organised and values their time, if anything. The second pillar that we've discussed today, or secret weapon, is flexibility. So having journeys that adapt to families, not these rigid funnels. So by having a flexible admissions process, This recognizes that families enter at different points, move at different speeds, and might need different information at different touch points. So when your systems and processes can flex, the experience then feels personable more than procedural. So shortly I'll be discussing some key takeaways where you can apply to your marketing and admissions teams, and process mapping is a really key one for that flexibility. We've then got feedback, which we've just touched on. So by having insights that drive continuous improvement year after year will allow you to learn from every interaction, refine your approach, and remove friction from the journey. It ensures your admissions process evolves alongside the changing family expectations rather than falling behind them. Now, of course, we know this doesn't happen overnight. I know that, things happen, and yeah, we can't do this all at once. But by being agile, you really can take a step back and ask what's working well, where are families or students getting stuck in your process, and which processes create unnecessary delays or confusion. So again, one of the key takeaways, which I'll discuss shortly, is looking at process mapping. Mapping out each part of your current admissions process, right from that first touch point, all the way to enrollment, or they accept in a place and they start as a student at your school, college, or university. And by being able to identify any of the challenges, the sticking points, and seeing where you can improve. So the organizations, so education organizations that we work with and have done this, they review their journeys, simplify their systems, and then this means they can remove any of that friction that might occur. And I would argue that these are the ones that really stand out by always looking at their process and thinking, okay, how can we improve to ensure our families and students have a great experience? And this really leads to when admissions is agile, it stops being an administrative function, but actually it becomes a strategic advantage, one that strengthens trust with your families and your students, improves that conversion rate, and delivers a better experience for both families, students, and also your marketing and admissions teams. So, looking at the practical takeaways that I was just discussing, this is how we can really bring that agility to life. Okay, let me just add them here. So, regardless of the size of your team or where you are on your systems journey, hopefully this will really allow you to, take some actionable feedback away from today to start looking at how you can improve the way you're working. Now, of course, as I've mentioned, this isn't just about doing all of this at once. It's about making those small intentional changes that then will build momentum over time. So the first one I want to touch on is audit your response times. So this might be to sample recent inquiries and see how long your follow-up actually takes. Ask yourselves, how quickly do we acknowledge a new inquiry today? How long does it take for a family to hear from a real person? A simple exercise for this could be to look at the latest or last 10 to 20 inquiries, track how long it took to acknowledge them, then track how long it took for a personal follow-up. This will then easily reveal any bottlenecks in this process, any handover issues, and where automation could remove pressures from your team. And if you've got HubSpot or you've got your automated system already, by automating these follow-up to acknowledge, an inquiry or a registration submission, or when someone's attended a tour, just a simple automated, thank you for attending our tour. It was lovely to see you. Here are the next steps. Really kind of creates that trust there. So after you've audited your response times, like I've mentioned, you can automate these acknowledgements where possible. You can review the performance, at each admission cycle. You don't need to review it every week or so. It might be, at the end of the academic year, the admission cycle, you review this all again. And also aim for consistency, not perfection. So as I mentioned, speed really builds that trust. And that trust starts with that first response to a family, a parent, or to a student. The next one is to map your journeys. Now, I touched on this not too long ago, but I would really recommend mapping your current admissions process and journeys. We actually do this as the first session in our onboarding that we do with our education organisations. And we map out every stage of the current admissions journey from the first inquiry, whether that's a phone call, whether that's a parent or a student emailing an email inbox, whether that's an inquiry form, prospectus request being submitted. We map out these first kind of touch points all the way to enrolment. And this isn't just the process. This includes systems, handovers, and also where any delays or any challenges and sticking points lay. So you can start from inquiry through to visits, applications or registration, and then your decisions of offer, no offer, all the way to enrolment. And this exercise really helps you find those rigid steps that don't flex, where you might be duplicating admin or you might be duplicating information input, where you could capture it all within a form, for example, or all within these key touch points. Also, it allows you to see where families might feel unsure or forgotten in your process because they might, go cold or not respond to an email for a while. So once this process is mapped, you can easily identify quick wins, perhaps assign ownership to each stage, and also revisit this journey regularly. It might be, at the end of the academic year, or it might be twice a year you want to review what you're currently doing and how you can improve this. Like I mentioned, this is something that we do with our schools, universities, colleges in our onboarding service that we provide. And this really allows us to understand what their current admissions journey is, where these challenges and sticking points are, and then how we can improve this, whether it's using automation or whether it's implementing other tools that will support them with this kind of manual admin work. And again, the key is where can we look at those sticking points? And where can teams be continuing to build those relationships with students and families? The next point is to build in feedback loops. So this might be simple surveys, clear reasons for a drop-off or a withdrawal, and a plan to act on these different insights. So again, we might want to start small, which I would suggest doing. It might be a short post-open day survey, a simple how did we do form or question at the end. Or you might want to capture withdrawal reason or decline reason. And this means you can start collecting this data to then review and then act on. Now, collecting feedback allows you to store it in one place, review it regularly, like I've mentioned, and then act on it. So even those small insights by starting small can lead to those big, meaningful changes because it might allow you to have a clearer messaging, better timing in your responses, but also more tailored follow-ups instead of maybe just a generic one because you don't have time to, follow up specifically about the applicant's journey. But over time, by collecting this feedback, it really becomes your guide for continuous improvement. So even though if you're starting small by, asking that one question, how was our open morning? What was your experience like? Over time, you can continue to build that and then also act and make changes. And then lastly here is leverage your technology. So we've mentioned technology a little bit today, but also I would suggest that using technology to support your team is so key. Of course, we don't want to overwhelm teams by introducing all these different technologies, but by using specific technology to support your team will allow them to feel supported in their role, and then hopefully they'll be able to feel like they can actually execute their role and, focus on that emotion building and relationship building. So this might be by using CRM tools, automation, and reporting from that feedback. This will really give you that foundation of agility. So it might be that you let these systems handle those instant acknowledgements as discussed today. Follow-up reminders, segmented communications, or just routine admin where these tools and technology can really support you. This then means your teams can focus on those conversations, that reassurance, and building these relationships and connections with families and students. I would say something that I have learned with working with schools, colleges, universities is that word of mouth is so strong and so powerful. If you are doing all of these things, or even just one, for example, using feedback or leveraging technology to be able to then create these connections and relationships with your families, then word of mouth will really come into play and really, benefit you. The schools that I've been working with at the moment and previously really kind of shine a light on that word of mouth piece. So it's really looking internally, what can you do to support your teams and your processes so your teams can then really focus on, like I said, building that connection with your families and your students to then generate that positive word of mouth. Okay, and of course, this is all important because these buyer journeys, your parents' journeys will continue to change, but your agility is how you stay relevant. So, to bring this all together, the age of admissions agility isn't just about doing more work, but it's about working smarter with speed to help you build that trust, flexibility to meet families where they are, not where you want them to be, and feedback to help you keep improving. Admissions becomes more than just a process that someone goes through. It becomes a strategic advantage, one that supports your teams, strengthens your reputation, and delivers the experience families now expect. So I will stop talking and I will pass back over to Amy.
Perfect. Well, Gemma, thank you so much for that. So yes, if there are any questions, then please do pop them in the chat for the time being. But kind of moving on to next steps, if you don't, we have kind of created a kind of process mapping guide that we will send out to you in an email. However, you can also scan that wee QR code if it's easier. I will also attach that to any post-event emails as well. So yeah, there will be that, and I will also attach the slides to this wee hug, just so you've got the information at hand as well, if this was of interest. We do have an upcoming hug in the next couple of months, which we will put live. There has been a change with the hug leadership program, and we've moved from a program Bevy, now we're on Hivebright, so there's been a bit of a change. So not all of our events are up as of yet, but they will be in the very near future, and we do hope that you attend some of them as well. So yes, thank you so much for joining us, and a massive big thank you to Gemma. It was honestly amazing. We don't seem to have any chats at the moment, but again, if you think of some, please do email us. We're always on hand. Yep. We've got a LinkedIn user group as well, which I did forget to add the link to the slide, so apologies. I will, though, attach this to the emails, which you should get in the next 24 hours. So yeah, you can kind of get in touch on there if you have any questions. From the HubGem team, we can help you out, or any other participants from other companies on there as well. They might even be able to help you out. So yes, please look out for that too and join us. So thank you. Thank you so much. And we
Thanks,
hope to,
everyone.
yeah, hope to see you all at the next event. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.